Hi, I'm Joanne Lee Cornish, body composition coach and slightly obsessed with being an outlier in midlife and beyond. I offer one-on-one coaching. I have 7 group coaching programs that I run throughout the year, and I also have a 10-month mentorship program. You can find out all about those and a lot more at my website, joannelee.com. Okay, let's get on with this podcast. Hello, and Happy New Year. I'm filming this, recording this on January the 1st, and it is both audio and it is video. So if you want to see the video of this, head over to YouTube while I figure out how to get the video versions uploaded onto Spotify and Google and Amazon and all that good stuff. But there is an option, so you can listen to me or definitely head over to YouTube. If you're watching me on YouTube, then happy New Year. So today I've got a couple of things I want to talk about. And a lot of the things that I talk about are based on experiences I've had myself or with prior clients or present clients. And the first topic we're going to talk about is food sensitivities in midlife. And this is something that I touched on in my Mastering Midlife program, but it is also a very real experience for one of my ladies. So let's talk about food sensitivities in midlife and why there might be foods that you used to be able to tolerate and suddenly you just can't eat them. They just don't love you back anymore. So let's start saying that, most food sensitivities in midlife are not random. They're not your body turning against you. They're not a sign that you suddenly need to eat like a monk or anything like that. They're just signals, but they are signals of what is going on and what might have changed. And if you understand why they happen, then and why they often show up worse in midlife, then they just become a little bit less confusing and a little bit more manageable. So let's start by talking about what is actually a food sensitivity. And if this is interesting to you, then please come and do my Type 28 program, because it is all about this, all of it. And it's a big deal. So and Type 28, I don't even know. I haven't got my schedule in front of me, but it's not around for a while, but definitely watch out for Type 28. So what do we mean by a food sensitivity? So let's clarify things first. I'm not talking about a food allergy. I'm not talking about anaphylactics. I'm not talking about an IgA medication reaction. Food sensitivities are different. They're more subtle. They are more delayed. And that's a big point. So if you're allergic to a food, you already know that. You don't need somebody to tell you if you're allergic, because if you're allergic to a food, you get a response straight away. Maybe hives, swelling, throat tightening up, you'll know straight away. And the term allergies and sensitivities gets very much used interchangeably, and they're not, because food sensitivities are different. They're a lot more subtle. They are delayed. A food sensitivity can show up 2, 3, 4, even 5 days after you ate the food, and they're also far more common than allergies. And therefore, they can make them difficult to recognize, because if you are getting bloating and headaches and something 5 days out, after eating a food, it's a little bit more difficult to put the connection together. But how can they show up? So bloating is definitely one. Joint pain is huge. Skin issues, angry skin, brain fog, fatigue, the digestional discomfort. But that is not always the case. Inflammation that doesn't seem to have a real clear reason, a real clear cause. And what we'll hear is like, oh man, I've ate this food my whole life and suddenly it's a problem. Or what I'll hear a lot is somebody that got symptoms and they go and get a food test, a food sensitivity, allergy food sensitivity test. And they'll say, oh my gosh, every single food that I eat, they'll say I'm allergic to. Well, they're not allergic. Everything, but what they are is everything they're eating, have a food sensitivity to. And they think, oh my gosh, this is just my bad luck that everything I enjoy to eat, I am reactionary to. But the reality is, well, that's because it's because you everything you eat, you're reactionary to because you're reacting to everything you eat. Does that make sense? And maybe I can explain that better if I talk about food sensitivities are rarely caused by, one bad food. The most common reason for a food sensitivity is leaky gut, a compromised gut lining. So this is where you've got your gut lining, um, and the analogy I like to use is imagine that your gut lining should be like cheesecloth. So if you think of cheesecloth, not very much can get through cheesecloth. And compare that to like fishnet stockings or something with big holes in it and anything can get through. Well, if you think of your gut lining and you think it's meant to be like cheesecloth. So what I mean by that is all the food that you eat should be completely broken down into the smallest possible tiniest form. It crosses through the gut barrier, which is like this cheesecloth for the sake of the analogy, and it enters the blood. And then from the blood, off it goes on its journey. But what if you've turned your gut lining into, it was cheesecloth, but now it's like fishnet stockings. So then you eat your food and it's kind of digested, but it doesn't have to be digested that much because, even partially digested, it can fall through the holes in your gut lining because there's big holes in it and it enters the blood. Well, now what's happening is your immune system is monitoring everything that enters your blood. And now you're getting these, simply put, for the visual, big clumps of food entering your blood, like food entering your blood in a state that it shouldn't be entering your blood. It should be fully digested, and it's not. So it's getting through into the blood in a form that the body doesn't really recognize. And your immune system goes to bat. Your immune system goes and attacks it because it doesn't recognize it. Well, that's why when people say, oh, I'm reactionary to every food that I eat, well, it's because every food that you eat isn't getting fully digested. It's falling through the gut lining, and the immune system is seeing it and saying, what the heck is that? I'm going to go attack that. So you're reactionary to all of the foods that you eat because none of them are getting fully broken down. So that's the frustration. But as I like to say, the obstacle is always the opportunity. So once you understand that, you're like, oh, well, hey ho, if I heal my gut lining, then, the food will go back to being fully digested before it enters my blood, and the immune system's not going to react to it because it recognizes it. So this is what happens, especially with things like, I think of eggs. Oh, I used to be able to eat eggs and now I can't. Well, if the egg's entering your blood in a form that the body doesn't recognize, your immune system's doing the right thing. It's attacking this. But this is what I'll see what will happen is somebody will be having all these digestive issues or headaches or skin issues, chronic fatigue, whatever it is. They have a food sensitivity test and they get it back, and everything they eat is in the red. And they are rightfully just totally like, oh my gosh, I can't eat anything anymore. My body is broken. And it's not that. It's like, no, you probably got leaky gut, probably got a compromised gut lining. And so your immune system is recognizing to everything you eat. Fix the gut lining and, the problem's going to definitely dissipate. So in other words, the food's not the villain. So a food sensitivity can be definitely from a gut lining. And I think, the more as a society we move away from quality food, this is a big issue. And I'm not going to do it in this recording, but please come and do Type 28 because, I talk about how when that immune system is triggered by an unhealthy gut, then that inflammation goes to the liver, and the liver insulin resistant, blah, blah, and good luck changing your body composition. So good luck. I'll save that for my Type 28 program. Anyway, what else can cause food sensitivities? Well, we said it's an immune system reaction, nervous system stress can do it, hormonal shifts, we're going to get onto that. So in other words, the food isn't the villain, it's the environment that the food then enters. So the gut barrier is the gatekeeper, and your gut lining is supposed to be, selectively permeable. It lets nutrients through. Um, but when the immune system starts reacting to things it normally wouldn't even notice, that's when things become problematic. And it's not because the food changed, it's because the terrain changed. So what can cause damages to the gut barrier over time? Let's talk causes now, because they don't just happen overnight. So poor quality foods, processed food, we have to stop. We have to stop. Even if the macros work, even if you're not getting fat eating them, we have to stop. Um, Highly processed foods, the ultra processed foods, and that is, and I'll do a podcast on this because that's going to get even worse. Because now with the weight loss medications, the food manufacturers are making their food even more palatable. They're taking that, the processing to a whole other level. So that's the non-negotiable, honestly, that everybody's negotiating. What else? Low fiber food. Fiber feeds the gut. If you're not feeding the gut, well, good luck. Um, Food that's high in additives, the emulsifiers, the preservatives, these are all going to stress out the gut line. They're not going to nourish it, they're going to stress it out. So even foods that are marked as healthy can indeed contribute if they're ultra processed or eaten without enough variety or enough fiber. And the processed food is especially bad because it is notoriously low in fiber. It has to be low in fiber because fiber would go rancid, they wouldn't have the shelf life, so it's notoriously low in fiber. I mentioned stress. So stress is a massive, massive driver for food sensitivity, and it is probably the one of the least acknowledged. Again, because nobody wants to do anything about it. But what stress is going to do, it's going to reduce the digestive enzyme output. It's going to alter gut motility. Everything slows down. It changes the microbiome. It changes the bacteria in your gut. Um, so you can be eating a pretty good diet, a perfect diet, but if your nervous system is constantly on high alert, the digestion system is going to suffer. What else? Poor sleep, overtraining, under eating. I probably need to do a podcast on that as well, on fasting and gut health. Alcohol, great topic for the first of the year. All of these things create an environment where the gut just never fully repairs. So does why am I talking about this subject with regards to midlife? Um, because it can actually be made so much worse in midlife, and especially for the ladies. So several of the protective mechanisms change. Estrogen declines, and estrogen plays a role in the health of the gut barrier. That's a big, 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 big thing. The estrogen plays a role with the immune regulation, what the immune response is doing. Estrogen plays a role in inflammation control. So as estrogen declines, as estrogen declines, the gut permeability is going to increase, so that gut lining is not as strong. This is interesting because that immune response I was talking about, where the immune response reacts to things it doesn't recognize, it becomes really more reactive, a lot more reactive. So as it maybe kind of went to bat for you, now it's really going, full tilt to help you out there. And also, as we get older, inflammation becomes harder to shut off. There's a thing called inflammation and aging. They put the two words together and they call it inflammaging because inflammation is such a part of an elevated chronic inflammation is such a part of the aging process. Does it have to be? No. Is it? Yes. It's definitely something that we have to pay more attention to. So the inflammation when the estrogen drops is a lot harder to shut off. So all in all, what this means is foods that were once tolerated, suddenly you're going to start having symptoms. Now, so that's the estrogen going down, but progesterone is going down as well. And progesterone is calming. It's calming both for our nervous system and for our gut. So the estrogen and progesterone balance, is super important. Estrogen can make us anxious, progesterone calms us down. That progesterone estrogen ratio is super, super important. So progesterone is calming for the nervous system, but also for the gut. So when we have lower progesterone, that often means a higher stress response, again, altered gut motility, and an increased sensitivity. Now, so the decline in progesterone can really amplify digestive symptoms and food reactions. So they're both going down, but then we've got testosterone. Yeah. So testosterone is there to support, and this is the guys as well here, is there to support tissue repair. It's muscle mass, it's metabolic stability. So yeah, testosterone, what did I say? It helps in tissue repair, muscle mass, and metabolic stability. So lower testosterone can indeed impair recovery. So we always think of in recovery in muscles and training, but that actually includes the recovery of the gut lining. So midlife isn't where the problem starts, but it's where the buffers are lost, where the protections are being lost. So it's not that people, I mean, most people didn't cause their food sensitivities in midlife, but they accumulated situations which changed the terrain. So they accumulated stress, they accumulated inflammation, they accumulated poor recovery. And then midlife removed the hormonal protections that used to keep everything a little bit quieter. So now it can be that symptoms finally become really noticeable. And like I say, it definitely can be the bloating and digestive conditions, but it can also be things like lack of focus, constant fatigue, which can be mistaken for, oh, I'm getting older. I'm not getting enough sleep, which is definitely part of it. But that can be very, very much linked to food sensitivities. When I do my Type 28 program, and I've got to be honest, that program, and it's probably because I don't explain it very well, honestly. Type 28, I think people think it's a training program. So it's probably my fault. But that is probably my most least attended program. And yet it's a program where I get the greatest results and I get them fast, fast, because everything in that program is built around, gut health, eating high quality foods. I mean, that's the gist of that program, high quality foods. So, the good thing there is that there's a reason it's a 28-day program, because within a month you can have a whole different environment, a whole different reaction. So when I do the Type 28 program, I mean, I hear people lose a lot of weight. They lose more than they do in my signature program on Type 28. But it's bloating goes away, the pain goes away, their tightness in their hands and their joints go away, sleep improves. So a lot of non-scale victories happen in Type 28, and they happen really quickly. To get back to so midlife, with the decline of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, the things that kept everything quieter can mean the symptoms become really noticeable. Now, couple this with, so midlife and food sensitivities are creeping up, and layer that with the hot flashes, the anxiety, the depression, maybe the relationship problems that has been caused by, I'm not saying caused by, but has been made worse by the midlife drama for both men and women. And you throw on that all of a sudden, now on top of all of that, you're depressed, you're fatigued, you're bloated, your skin's acting up, you've got a crazy headache. Not fun. But so few times are those symptoms linked to, I've got a food sensitivity. They're just lumped into like, life just sucks right now. So what about the role of hormone replacement therapy, HRT? And I'm going to tie this in with a real life experience I'm having with one of my ladies. Something in my teeth. So this is a nuanced topic, but it's an important one. So, and I'm a fan of hormone replacement therapy for me. It's not, it doesn't have to be for everybody. It definitely is for me and a lot of ladies. But don't be pushed, don't be forced against your will into this topic or away from this topic. Definitely educate yourself on this topic. And I have a lot of information on that. And the Mastering Midlife program will be coming around in the first quarter of this year. But how can HRT change your experience with food sensitivities? Now, it doesn't fix food sensitivities directly, but HRT, hormone replacement therapy, can change the environment in which the gut and the immune system operate. So estrogen replacement supports the gut barrier integrity, the health of the gut barrier. It reduces the inflammatory signal. It can definitely improve the immune tolerance, how reactionary the immune system is. And progesterone, as I mentioned, it can calm the nervous system. It can improve the digestive rhythm, reduce the stress-induced gut dysfunction. And as I say this, I really probably should do a podcast on that, on stress and the gut, because it is massive. I mean, the digestive system is run by the parasympathetic nervous system. So if we're always stressed, sympathetic nervous system is one side, parasympathetic nervous system is the other. The sympathetic nervous system is the very excited, stress, fight or flight part of the nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is the part that's calm and relaxed. They can't be on at the same time. So if we're always in a stressed environment, then the parasympathetic nervous system is turned off, and it's the parasympathetic nervous system that runs the digestive system. So if you're stressed, don't expect your digestive system to be working well. I mean, I think back to when I trained competitors, and every one of them was like, I'm bloated, I'm constipated, I'm this. They were too stressed. They were too overtraining, under-consuming, emotionally stressed. Direct correlation. So off the topic again, but if I get back, progesterone is the calming hormone. So it can really reduce stress-induced gut issues. And where appropriate, the testosterone, where appropriate, not every woman has to take testosterone. Not every woman wants to take testosterone, I should say. Supports tissue repair, improves metabolic resilience, and it just enhances overall recovery. So when our hormones are better balanced, the gut can heal more effectively. The immune system becomes less reactive, which is a huge part of this. And some foods may become tolerable again. And this is when people notice, like, I didn't change my diet, but my digestion is really good. My digestion is so much better. And what happened is a real life experience. I have a lady who's really diligent about her blood work, had a rough time in perimenopause, really diligent about getting data collecting blood work and different doctors, really diligent. And that was super interesting because she had done the Cyrex food sensitivity test, which again, come back to Type 28 program, but it's the gold standard when it comes to getting a clean blood draw and doing a food sensitivity test. So the ELISA test by Cyrex. So she had done this, and indeed, even a year ago, but I've known her several years now, and she's always been in the red. All these foods that she ate, just she was so reactionary to it. Um, Started HRT, really, you know what? She really explored HRT because I'm waving the ban. I'm the biggest fan, but she really explored on her own merit HRT. She didn't just jump on my suggestion, which nobody should. And anyway, she started HRT. She was very conservative. It took her a little while to balance out what she needed. But anyway, she's in a good place now. She goes back and does her the ELISA test by Cyrex with her I believe it's a naturopath. And so many of the foods she was sensitive to, they were in the red, now in the green, or they're in the orange. She's not nearly as reactive to the foods which were causing her a lot of problems. And also, not just problems, a lot of anxiety. You're always dodging, a tomato or this or that, or you're trying to eat protein, but chicken and turkey and everything you're sensitive to. So the correlation, it's interesting for me there because I know this stuff, but when I actually have somebody that does the tests and has the data, and we can actually see the difference that absolutely correlates from her starting her hormone replacement therapy. Super fascinating. And she's going to retest again because she's only been on HRT a short amount of time, and everything's improved dramatically already. So that's a whole different life experience, isn't it? The food choices, being able to get a protein in, discomfort, bloating, headaches were big for her. So just to be clear, that's not that HRT is going to be a license to ignore the quality of food or a license to ignore stress, because they are still a really, really massive part of gut permeability. I mean, and this isn't just midlife women, this is anybody. I'm looking at the kids eating this crap and I'm like, man, that's going to be a problem. But what HRT does seem to do is it restores capacity. So it gives the body more resilience, more repairability, just more tolerance. And this really matters. So when people say, so when people get confused, this is where frustration kicks in, right? So somebody eats clean, but they avoid the obvious triggers and symptoms persist. And that's because the food sensitivities are often a systemic issue. It can be that they're not a dietary one alone. So when stress is high, even if people have got, and again, I see this a lot in the fitness industry, diet's perfect, super active, but the stress and the poor sleep is crushing them. It could be that somebody's eating really well, but their hormones are low. The gut is just struggling no matter how clean the plate looks. So it could be a big reframe there. Most people's food sensitivities are coming from the poor quality food that they're eating, even if their macros are right, and even if they don't need to lose weight, but they're eating crap. And, there's no dodging that. Everybody's trying to dodge that, but there's no dodging the damage that will do to your gut. And, I'm talking about the first step of this, where you've got leaky gut and a food sensitivity, but, the inflammation that your immune system is causing, it ricochets through your body. And, I'll save that if you come and do Height 28, but it's scary to think of what that's happening with the young people who, from day one, most of them have been brought up with processed food. I mean, how they avoid that journey. I mean, we already see it with kids with liver issues, fatty liver disease in kids. Anyway, so you've got the people that are just, even if their macros are right and the calories are right, they're eating crap, it's going to be a problem. There's no dodging that. But you've also got the people, and I'm talking to especially my tribe in midlife, who are really eating pretty clean. They're doing the work, but they're having a tough time. And this can be down to stress, sleep, and it can indeed be down to low hormones. So the food sensitivities, they're not punishment, but they are a feedback. They are telling you something. And that can be, hey, you need to check yourself at the door with what you're eating, you know? And it can be, hey, you're doing everything right, but your lifestyle, your stress, and maybe, your low hormonal profile is causing you a problem. So in midlife, what is happening for so many women is the message just gets louder. And again, it's layered on top of all the other, crazy things that are going in that perimenopausal, in those perimenopausal years. So ladies, I ask you there to, I'm not pushing you into HRT, but if you are, digestive issues, bloating, fatigue, skin issues, headaches, lack of focus, then really get a really go and get a food sensitivity test. And don't do one of those home tests. In my program, I talk about why. Definitely check up, go to Cyrex, go to cyrexlabs.com, I think it is. And on there, you'll see a location link where you can see who does that. This does the ELISA test close by you, and I would do that. I would definitely do that test. And if and when those results come back alarmingly and everything's in the red, just don't dismay. It's feedback, it's data. The obstacle is always the opportunity. It's saying, hey, the gut's in trouble. Let's decide and find out why. And maybe at the same time, you get a hormonal panel and see if there's some correlation going on there. What else did I want to talk about in this part of the podcast? So this directly links to the subject of consequences. And I'm doing this at the beginning of the year. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to load this podcast, but it will definitely be before I start my Victory Vault program. And my Victory Vault program is all about a tough self-assessment of who we need to be and to achieve anything in this coming year. And I was thinking about that, and I was trying to think about the topic of consequences, because often, there's a signal that something needs to change, but not because of what I want to do better, but what it's costing me now. And when there's a consequence to an action, it's a little bit easier to make a change. So what I mean by that is, say it's alcohol. If you're every time you drink, you're getting loaded and you're having a row with your spouse or getting into a street fight or something like that, there's a consequence to your actions, consequence to your behavior, I should say. And when we're having consequences, it's easier to make a change because there's a real cost to that, right? There's a real cost to that. But I'll think of a different example. What about something like you're just eating really bad food, poor quality food, and you're constantly constipated or running to the bathroom, and there's a real consequence. It becomes a lot easier to make a change. Right? So the consequence can be the catalyst for a change. That's what I'm trying to say here. But what about if there isn't a consequence? The relationship to so what I'm talking about here is, if there's an actual consequence that you don't like from a certain behavior, it becomes a lot easier to make a change. But what we can sometimes struggle with, and I think one of the reasons that we sometimes don't achieve the change that we want, is because there isn't enough of a consequence. So let's go still with that alcohol example. What if you would like to drink less, but when you do drink, it's never a problem. You drink in moderation, you're never drunk, you wake up fine, but you still would like to be you still don't like that about yourself. Or say, you know, you don't eat well, but your digestion's fine, you're fine with your body composition, so there's no real consequence, but you just know that you don't like the fact that you're the person that goes through the drive-through, 4 times a week. Or say, um, you go to bed super late at night, but you wake up, you feel okay. You get everything you need to do during the day. You just wish, you wish you had more discipline to go to bed at a certain time. So a lot of the times the resistance to change is when there is not enough of a consequence. And I find that that's when change doesn't occur because there isn't a real cost. So what if there isn't a real cost, what is the value of that change? And why is it important to you? So these are the changes that people fail to make because there is no real cost and they're not really identifying the value of the change. And what this is, the value of these changes that don't have consequences. So there's something you'd like to do, it's not really costing you. So like, let's say social media scrolling. So you spend 45 minutes before you go to bed and you're like, but you still went to bed at the same time. It didn't affect anything about your day. Your work still got done. It was probably 45 minutes that maybe you would have been watching a TV show or on the phone anyway. So there's no real cost except you're like, I don't like the fact that I spent 45 minutes of my day, scrolling social media. So there's no real cost, there's no real consequence, but at the center of that, and this is what I'm getting at very badly, but this is what I'm getting at. What people want is they don't like who they are with that behavior. It's not that the behavior has a consequence, they just don't like themselves as much with that behavior. And there indeed lies the value. And this is what I do in the Victory Vault. It's not about changing who you are at all, because it's not about making you wrong or bad or not liking yourself. It's all about liking yourself more and identifying the behaviors where, hey, maybe there's no real cost, maybe there's no real consequence to them, but if you didn't do them, how much more would you like yourself? How much more would you be proud of yourself, enjoy yourself, just love yourself? And these are the changes that these are the changes and the success that people don't achieve. And I know personally for me going into 2026 and when we do the Victory Vault program, that is honestly, there's a few things that there's behaviors of mine that don't have consequences, but I don't like that I do them. And they're going to change. And they're going to change by me identifying who is the best version of myself. How does the Joanne that Joanne really, really likes, how does she act through her day? How does she act as a person in her relationships, as every behavior, even the smallest one, through her day? And I'm moving towards that. Now, why is that important? That's important because if I like myself more, if I am proud of myself more, then how I view myself is better. How my self-confidence, my belief in myself is improved. And you probably know where I'm going with this, but you can never be better than your thoughts. You can never have a result that is better than how you view yourself, how you believe in yourself. So a lot of those actions which don't have a consequence, nobody judges you on them, nobody even knows you're doing them, you just don't like the fact that you do them. they're expensive. There is a real cost and indeed a real consequence. And the consequence isn't immediate, but the consequence is never being the fully expressed version of yourself that you really like yourself. You're really proud of yourself. You just love yourself. So the belief in yourself is so high that what you can achieve is beyond. We can't be better than our thought, and we can't be better than what we believe of ourselves. So maybe you have some big things you'd like to change in 2026, some goals, quote unquote, but you don't necessarily have to have goals to join the victory vault. You just have to want to be better. And by being better, you will like yourself more, love yourself more. There will be an ease and a joy to the journey of success. But now whatever success you want to achieve is a million times more possible because of your self-belief. I hope that makes sense. So the Victory Vault is coming up in January the 26th. It's only a 2-week program. There's, I think, 5 live coaching calls. You just have to go to yourvictoryvault.com, the website. Questions, you can message me. But this is a pivot point for a lot of people for their year. So many people have had real life pivots after doing the Victory Vault. I'm excited to coach it because there are 3 things that I want to address about myself this year. And none of them are goals, really, but they are all about my behaviors being better. And when I achieve them, I will like myself more. And if I like myself more, my outcomes in everything else will improve. January 26th, yourvictoryvault.com. Hope you enjoyed that about food sensitivities. I think it applies to a lot of those of you listening or watching me. Happy New Year. I do hope you enjoyed this podcast. You can find me all over social. Just search for my name, Joanne Lee Cornish, and of course my website, joannelee.com. Be sure to check out what program I have got right now. I'm sure to be running something. And remember, you can always contact me, joanne@joannelee.com. Until next time.